Welcome to Reflections, a program where we discuss values and virtues for the transformation of the individual and the society at large. I am Father George Ehusani, and I have with me a great guest in the studio today. He is Chief Audu Ogbeh, Minister of Agriculture and Rural Development. You're welcome, sir.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. Chief Audu Ogbeh is 70 years old as at July 28, 2017. Trained at the Mount St. Michael's Secondary School in Alede, Benue State. He attended King's College for his HSC and then proceeded to ABU, where he read French literature and went to Dakar for his 1 year abroad, and later did a master's degree at the University of Toulouse in France. He came back and became a lecturer at the Ahmadu University, and later headed the Murtala Muhammad Institute,
College of Arts and Science.
College of Arts and Science. Between 1973 and 1979. 1979, he joined politics and became Deputy Speaker at the Benue State House of Assembly. From there, he became Minister, Federal Minister in
Communications.
Minister of Communication, and later Minister of
Steel
Development between 1982
and 83.
And the time the military coup struck in December 1983. He became a farmer afterwards. Fugo Farms in Benue State in Makurdi. And then when politics came back in 1999, he joined politics, PDP, and he became chairman of PDP during the Obasanjo years up to 2005,
January.
When he resigned because of a major difference between himself and the president at the time. Now, today, he is an active member of the ruling party, APC, and he is the Minister of Agriculture and Rural Development. Like I said, Chief Audu Ogbeh is an elder statesman. At 70, he's an elder statesman, and he is one of those that have observed Nigerian politics between independence and now. You were almost finishing secondary school.
At independence, 1960, I was finishing primary school.
Oh, finishing primary school. So I'm coming behind you. Huh? Now, this is it. Chief Audu Ogbeh, this is Nigeria. You have observed from 1960, you are a teenager, right, by that time, or a young
teenager.
And you were active in school to the extent that you attended one of the most prestigious secondary schools in Nigeria, King's College, Lagos, and went to one of the most prestigious universities in Nigeria, Abuja University, and one of the most prestigious and oldest universities in the world, Toulouse, University of Toulouse in France. Now, you have seen it all. You are in the privileged position of having been chairman of PDP and a chieftain of APC and minister in this present regime. What's going on in the country? I look at you and all that we have shared about this country in private, and I see all that you have shared in public. At 70, as you look at the country and you look at younger people and the nation as it is evolving, what's going on? What kind of country is your generation and my generation are we bequeathing to the younger generation? What kind of Nigeria? Today it is IPOB and Biafra and Arewa Youth and Avengers, all kinds of ethnic warlords all over the place. What's going on? And do you have an interpretation for what is going on today, and how can a major catastrophe be averted in our country? This is what I want us to discuss, sir.
Thank you very much, Father. Just before coming here, I received a visitor, an emir.
Okay.
And after that, a former governor.
Okay.
And these were the topics. What is going on is the problem of a nation that has a major disease but fails to identify that disease.
A major disease which we have failed to identify.
Exactly. It's like the case of somebody who has cancer.
Yes.
And is suffering from constant headaches.
And is treating the headache rather than the cancer.
It keeps consuming Panadol, hoping to get the pain away. At the bottom of a lot of these crises is the economy.
The economy.
The economy. You're talking about younger people, and that's the really painful one. We had fun.
When you were young, yeah.
We had scholarships, it was easy to pay school fees. We listened to parents because they had moral control.
They had moral control, and that's part of the reason you listen to the parents.
Exactly. And they led by example, and they told you point blank, you can't come home with a pencil
that does not belong to you.
And you can't be carrying things around, where did you get this from? And the entire community was watching over every child in the community.
That is important.
If you misbehaved, they could beat you up before taking you to your father. And your father would beat you up even more for embarrassing him. And then the community, he would thank the person who brought you home. Slowly,
we lost
very slowly, that society, founded on very solid moral grounds, started failing. And once the coup set in, dramatic change is not always the best of changes. Radicals sometimes may sound very attractive to society, but from among them you also produce the rascals who lead to wars and conflicts which are thoroughly unnecessary. Conservatives are looked down upon because, well, you know, they are plodding, they're too slow.
They are too slow.
Yeah, but a certain element of conservatism is absolutely necessary, because one of the tragedies of Africa is that we have very little regard for history. In fact, now it has been cancelled in our schools. Where were we 40 years ago, 50 years ago? What have we learned from other societies like India and China and Brazil? A place like India has never seen a coup. India became independent in May 1947. They've never had a coup.
And yet they have had bad governments.
Bad, terrible governments. They've had more hunger and starvation. They've had religious violence on a scale no country has had. India has had corruption on a scale that nobody can imagine. The army simply said it's not our business to intervene in government.
And that has saved that nation.
So, continuity and improvement, self-criticism. But we love dramatic change. Violent coups, bloody coups, and so on. And so suspicion has set in. Now, having said all that, what's the problem here? We copy a bit too quickly and too wrongly from elsewhere. And we also copy from the wrong sources. In 1986, we had this thing called the Structural Adjustment Program dumped on Africa.
That destroyed most countries in Africa.
Everything. And I am sorry to say, I am not an economist. I was in Hong Kong visiting with a friend when we heard on television that the auctioning began in April.
Auctioning of our national currency.
Exactly. And it was 3 naira to $1.
1986.
Yes. And economists in Nigeria said it was the only way out. Now, economics is honestly 90% common sense. Why are you auctioning your currency when what to do is to cut down on imports
and boost
and stimulate
export.
Local production? Why are you shipping in rice? That one began as far back as 1982, a task force on the importation of rice. I was a young man in the cabinet. I was 34 years old. And I asked the question, why not a task force for the production of rice? I was told, oh, you guys from the university, you don't know anything. In the interim, let's just import. The bill rose to $5 million a day and remained so for nearly 30 years.
From the Taiwanese?
Yes. Taiwan, from Thailand, Vietnam, and even India. You just ship your money out and ship in goods. And once the structural adjustment came, we added onto it free trade. So we opened our windows, our doors, our roofs, and any foreign good was arriving.
Dumped in.
Plastics that wouldn't last an hour in the hand of a child as toys, honey, sugar, milk, toothpicks, handkerchiefs, pins on the table. We produce nothing. If you go to your house and look around,
practically everything.
What is it that is made here? Almost nothing. And we said it was perfect. Why? Oil and gas money. You ship out oil, send the proceeds to sustain other economies and bring in their goods. Along with the goods, unemployment and poverty
started.
Yeah.
So then we lost all our institutions,
yes.
Industries.
Yes, exactly.
The granite pyramids
everything
in the north
disappeared because it was no longer fashionable.
The textile industry
to go to the farm. So, if you go to the southeast, between 1982 and 1990, 510 industries sprang up. I think the Igbos then decided, rather than trade, we'll produce. Less than 90 of those industries are still running. The factories have closed, their owners have died.
500 industries.
In the East. The owners have died, their dreams have died. So today when you hear of IPOB, you study the character of the Igbo man. He likes to be busy. He wants to make his money. He's busy moving, making money and enjoying himself. Now if the system is locked down, he can't access foreign exchange to import. Even when he imports, he can't sell. He can't produce. So you have a younger generation of the Kanus and others who have not seen war.
Yeah.
And they are beating the drums of war. And they are walking around with clenched fists. The older ones who
have seen
saw
war
are not enthusiastic but kind of scared of saying anything for fear of upsetting these young ones.
Yeah, because that's part of what worries me.
Exactly.
That a lot of the older ones who saw war, the bitterness of war, the brutality of war, often kept quiet until when it was almost too late.
Precisely. So then the Arewayos got up and said, okay, you want to go, we'll give you a send-off. You go in 90 days. Which itself is not a solution to the problem. How do you tell people who have invested for so long and live here and have properties?
For whom this is their place.
Exactly. Now, do they carry their houses on trailers and
carry their farms?
And where is the home? Nigeria is a home. But all of this is being caused by a fundamental problem. There's discomfort.
There is major discontent all over the place.
So young people have nothing to aspire to. Young people can't think of a day when they will marry, have a flat of their own, own a job, and even if they have a job today, the wage is too low. Then at the bottom of it all again is that since 1986, we've had the most tragic philosophy of economic management, where interest rates have stood on the average at between 25% and 35%.
And no one can invest with that kind of thing.
Now, how do you borrow at 35% unless you are into crime? Maybe cocaine. What do you produce with 35%? And buy your generator, and buy your diesel, and pay your tax, and pay your workers a living wage. And when you talk about it, these brilliant people said they read in Harvard and Yale and Oxford. Where in the world are interest rates this high now?
I mean, I lived briefly in Germany, and the interest rate was 1.52%.
Today, worldwide, the average interest rate in agric is 3%. Here it is 18%, if the bank is kind enough to consider your project.
Yes.
Yet you want cheap rice, and you want cheap beans, and you want tomato paste, and you want toothpicks. And nobody wants to discuss it. I raise it, I have been yelling and shouting. 16 years ago, I warned about Boko Haram in Kaduna at a lecture where there were 2,000 northern politicians. The late Abubakar Harimi, Damu Chiroma, they were there. The topic was the North and the future of Nigeria. And I said there was going to be violence on a scale never known in our history. Violence wearing the face of religion.
Because there is nothing to occupy the young people.
Because during our tours and the campaigns, I always took an interest in looking down from the days at the faces of these boys, on the average 16 to 25. And I would ask Abubakar Harimi, the late, do you think these boys will gather in another 10 years to cheer us or to tear all of us apart? And you say to me, Audu, you scare me each time you ask this question. There was a time I was in the same car.
Because Abubakar Harimi was a highly progressive person.
Yes, I was in the same car with the Galinaba, then speaker. We went for a rally, and two young men hung on to the jeep and refused to come down in Taraba. We drove 18 kilometers out of town and stopped to buy fuel, and we came down and said, why are you doing this? You'll endanger your lives. And they said to me, sir, we've been with you since morning, and you
have not settled us.
And I said, but you speak well. Said, yes, I have a BSc in chemistry, and the other one BSc geography. What do you do? Nothing. We want to come to Abuja. We don't know anybody there. I said, Gali, you see.
That's Gali Naba.
Yes, we're in the same car. All right, so we found something for them. And I said, I wish I was not in government then. I wish I could find a job for you. But in the whole country, you have 154 universities now.
154.
Yeah, turning out
Graduates every year.
Some not particularly well-formed, some very poorly educated. But again, why? Go to the university campus. There's no light. The university spends 50 million a month generating electricity. So these kids can't read. The room in which I was in Zaria, in Danfodio Hall,
you can hardly put your face now.
As big as this studio. I had a spare bed in my room. I had a mobilette. I had a chopper bike. They gave us chicken and eggs and salad. They washed our clothes and delivered. We had a decent toilet system. Go there now, there are 9 young men in the room. So we're now running intellectual ghettos. No light to read at night. The hostels, and it's everywhere. If you go to Ife or Nsukka or University of Ekpoma or ABU, the number of young people who get killed daily on Okada accidents because they're living in the town because there's no space in the campus.
Or living in some slum squalor in the university.
In the university. Or within the compound where they found a room, there are 9 families with 1 toilet.
So you queue.
Yeah, you queue, and then they can't read at night. A whole structure collapsing. So if you have intellectual ghettos like that, what are you turning out? So,
sir, you are saying that a lot of this started collapsing from the 1986 structural adjustment program.
That's it, believe me.
Ill-conceived economic policy.
Yeah, it was dumped on Africa, and luckily, at least, some Europeans have held this view. I had the opportunity in April last year, during the binational commission between us and the US, to tell the Americans, John Kerry wasn't there, his deputy was there, that you brought this disaster upon us. You crafted.
And I read a book of Joseph Stiglitz,
yes,
former IMF boss,
yes,
who now wrote after he left IMF,
yes,
of the disaster that this structural adjustment program
Actually, it was a confession of a disaster organizer upon Africa.
But we have not changed. I mean, we are still devaluing and we are still saying the answer to our problem is devaluing our currency.
This is my own issue with this thing. I said to them, I am not an economist. I didn't go to Harvard. I didn't go to Yale. But I have a bit of common sense. How do you justify devaluing your currency every week for 30 years? 30 years. Nobody wants to look back now. 30 solid years of weekly devaluation of your currency, and you tell me you are a brilliant economist? Photocopiers. Very poor photocopiers. Brazil, India, Malaysia, and China rejected it.
And they are the ones that have grown
the same Western Europeans are praising them. They killed Africa. You can't borrow. It was an avenue for capital flight. All sorts of robbers from abroad came here and took our money away. And impoverished Africa. It's okay today to blame the government of the day. This was going to come anyway. It doesn't matter if it was a government run by angels. You have no money.
But, sir, as a chieftain of APC, I mean, didn't you have the opportunity to express these views in while crafting the economic policy of this administration?
I was even the chairman of the manifesto committee. And I told them, access to credit, private capital, is a very strategic instrument for economic growth. We can't keep waiting for the budget. How much is the budget as a fraction of GDP? Too small. Of the budget, before we came in, 92% was overhead, recurrent, and debt repayment.
So you cannot develop with it.
So 8% was left. You hear people telling you, oh, the Maputo Declaration says give 10% to agri, 25% to education, World Bank. If you have only 8% left
to share,
how do you take 25% of 8% or what? So you can't do anything. When you raise these issues, and we designed the manifesto, and I said we must create 5 new development banks to make money accessible at 5% to young people, old people, whoever who want to grow the economy.
And particularly in agriculture.
Exactly. If you don't do it, everything we're saying will fail. We got to the plenary to present it. Some of the older hands said, no, let's not worry the banks, let's allow things to be. 2 young men, one of them is the current Minister of Aviation, and one chap from the House of Reps, from the Southeast. They got up and said, this is the key to this, to the change we want to bring about. If you remove it, let's cancel it and go back to our old parties. So we passed it. But of course, people now tinkered again with the manifesto, and we're not applying it.
We had on this program once a former Director General of the Nigerian Economic Summit Group, Chief Frank Nweke Jr. And Well, I also asked the similar question, what's going on? And it is seen as ethnic antipathies in Nigeria. You are saying that this has to do with the economy principally.
If people, you know Nigerians, if they are making their money, they have a reason to believe in the future. Why? Who is afraid of peace? Who wants war when he has a shop? He has a factory.
And if you are doing well in a big country, exactly, why would you want to have?
You have a huge market. Why do you want to hear that the Onitsha bridge collapsed? You can't cross, or that the Abuja road there is a riot. You can't deliver your goods to your buyer, or you are moving to the airport to fly your things to Europe, and then because of fighting near the airport, you can't get there. Your customer over there is not interested in your stories here. He wants the goods on the 10th of June at 2 a.m. So he picks the goods up at 7 a.m. and is delivering to Tesco and Harrods in the morning. So believe me, 99% of Nigerians are not really, to use the word, I don't want to use the word normal, but at peace. You leave home, there's some anxiety. Your wife said there's no food. The children's school fees have not been paid. The landlord is harassing you. The electricity bill, your card ran out. You're driving out. You can't say you're normal.
That is why there's such agitation on the road.
In the traffic, we're all under tension. The very rich are scared of the poor because criminals may be around, kidnappers. It's a very terrible situation. We are not at ease as a nation. And if we don't sort it out from that foundation, believe me, we can't go far.
So if we don't sort it out, the rich cannot enjoy their wealth?
No.
And the poor are too poor to feel comfortable in the country?
And even to feel a sense of belonging.
Yeah,
hey, this is my country, I'm willing to die for it. They can't.
While we are struggling to come out, and people like you keep preaching what you believe, that look, we need to sort out the economy, and we are going to sort out the economy by growing the economy, precisely, not by devaluing our currency continuously. Exactly. While we are doing that, I mean, there is a major complaint about restructuring, and everybody is talking about restructuring. There needs to be some answer from elder statesmen like you about this call for restructuring.
Restructuring, the arguments are strong because, again, we had the First Republic where the regions managed their resources and paid tax to the center. And the center ran the army, the foreign policy, provided major infrastructure like power and roads and bridges. People are now looking back and say, no, if I have gold in my backyard, why must it be a cadastral office in Abuja that decides whether anybody can mine it? Yes. And there's some sense in it.
Yeah, of course.
Allow the states. Now arguments are that, oh, states can't survive. Allow them room. Some can't survive because of poor leadership.
Yeah.
And we have a very poor system of picking leaders too. It's always the whims and caprices of some individual or group that plants somebody there who has no capacity to run a state. That's another issue.
I mean, kind of people who could not have even won any serious election for a local government.
Yeah, so that is it. But people are saying, okay, give us some room. There's some argument about state police. Now, some people are scared to death of the state police, again because they had a previous experience. In the north, what do they call them? The Native Authority Police. They visited atrocities on people. So that memory lingers in the mind of northerners and say, no, we don't want state police. But that's probably not the long-term solution. And they also fear that irresponsibility among the politicians will result in people using the police to victimize political opponents. And that is likely.
There seems to be argument on both sides.
Yes, we Africans are very emotional, very sentimental. You know, how can you be there and how can he criticize you? The police go and pick up somebody because he has a critical view. The judges themselves are subject to all kinds of, windy influences.
Yeah.
So this is it. But the point is, Father, fix the economy. You can't tell the younger generation, who constitute almost 60% of our population, to wait forever. What's the date?
And what's going on in the Ministry of Agric and Rural Development now as we round up this segment?
Yes.
What hope, what positive information do you have to give Nigerians?
What we are doing, you can't believe this. By the end of 2015, we turned out 15 million tons of rice paddy.
Per day?
No, the whole year, 15,000 tons. 15 million tons. By June this year.
2017?
Yes. according to a study carried out not by us, but the DFID, the British group, we had produced 17 million tons of rice on the farms.
Half of the year?
Yeah.
So we are hoping to produce
by
at
the
least
end
30.
of this year, we'll have no need to import 1 grain of rice, because I have brought in 200 rice mills, which we are giving out from Monday to different parts of the country to make sure that there's a rice mill in every senatorial district at the very minimum.
So we were spending by
$5 million a day importing rice.
Was $5 million a day
for up to 2015.
So we will save $5 million a day by the end of the year if this plan works out.
Precisely. And it will. Now, you heard a few days ago that we're exporting yams. And Nigerians raised an alarm, and I want to say here, there's no reason to panic. We produce 70% of the world's total output of yams. But it's Ghana that has the reputation for exporting yams.
We are the ones, we are the real pounded yam nation.
Exactly, and most of these yams are from Nigeria, packaged by some Indian traders, labeled as Ghana yam into UK. So when Nigerians begin to react sometimes angrily, maybe because probably we haven't explained enough, we are in no danger of yam shortage. Nobody in Nigeria can tell me he went to the market and didn't find yams. Prices are high. I agree with that. At the end of season, they always go high.
Yes.
But new yams are already out. There was a riot in Kwara 5 days ago over a yam festival, new yam festival. We have yams. 30% of our yams rot away because we have not devised a way of preserving
them, just like our fruits.
So now we're setting up fruit and vegetable stores using solar energy to keep the temperatures at 14 degrees. The yams will stay 3 years there.
What about dried fruits? You know, in many countries they are packaged
We've started doing that now. There are many packages of dried fruits in shops. We have to use stainless steel of food grade to produce them. And stainless steel is costly, so we've just brought down the duty on stainless steel from 25% to 5% because local manufacturers produce these things now. The problem here is that for nearly 50 years we forgot agric. No country has been able to sort it out in 1 year or two.
Yeah.
It took Brazil 30 years, took India 40 years. I had a group from Poland yesterday. It took them 30 years after the Second World War to get their agriculture back. We don't have the luxury of waiting another 30 years. We're working hard. We're building dams and lakes. We have restructured the Bank of Agric. We returned the Universities of Agric from education to my ministry so they can do research and improve seeds. So work is going on. But we've got to create
What word of hope do you have for Nigerian young people to end this segment? Some word of hope to Nigerian young people that, look, we know your problem is poor economy.
Yeah.
Something is beginning to happen. And
when we restructure the Bank of Agric, we are getting a license for them to begin to take deposits, because as it is, it's a development bank, can't take deposits. And you know what we want to do? We're targeting 50 million shareholders in the Bank of Agric, copying the example of China. The largest bank in the world is a Chinese Bank of Agric, 800 million shareholders. They own 5-star hotels. Interest rate 3.5%. We're telling young people, not all of you will be farmers, those of you who want to, please come along with us.
I hope that a lot of these plans you have talked about are plans that could be executed within the next 1.5 years of
We're working very hard, the new stage now, because we've almost taken control of the grain situation, apart from wheat. The next thing is plantations and processing. We now import machines and sell them to young people at 60% discount. Because left on their own, they can't open an LC for $10,000. They don't have the money. No bank will give them the money. So help you set up and then grow from there. Because if not, we're in serious trouble.
For our young people who are hungry and angry, these are words of hope from the Minister of Agriculture and Rural Development, that there is hope for Nigeria. I mean, a lot of these cries here and there is on account of the widespread discontent in the country. The minister is saying there is hope. And this is not going to happen overnight, but if we are patient, Nigeria will develop. And we do hope that those kind of policies that have led us where we are, those Harvard and Cambridge kind of policies that have led us where we are, that some reason will now come and people will begin to run the country from the kind of policies that can grow the economy rather than simply devalue the currency.
Thank you very much.
On that note, we will end this segment of the program. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
I know, for example, at my age, there are some words till today I cannot say. But you find 3, 5, 7-year-old children just peeling it on the street. And it doesn't matter. And in fact, it is seen as a level of sophistication.
A big man was certainly handcuffed and hair was let loose. And I had to ask some of my colleagues, are you aware that on a daily basis, the ordinary people who have committed
minor
trifle offenses are not only handcuffed, they are leg chained.
Yes.
But nobody talks about them.
And thrown into Black Maria.
Thrown into Black Maria. Sometimes the Black Maria is put in the sun.
The tragedy of the military coup is set in motion a range of issues that so destabilize this country. And the result is that we've ended in the last 20 or 30 years with an academic community that has become so traumatized that it has also lost the capacity to even do what intellectuals and academicians ought to do.
Welcome back. I have been discussing with Chief Audu Ogbeh, Minister of Agriculture and Rural Development. Chief Audu Ogbeh has been around in Nigerian politics since 1979. He has been chairman of the People's Democratic Party. He has been Minister of Communication, Minister of Steel Development. Now, as Minister of Agric and Rural Development, and 70 this year, I will say, Chief Audu Ogbeh, you are an elder statesman, as we say in Nigeria. Once again, I ask you the question. As an elder statesman and a Christian, a committed Christian, what kind of Christian church or churches are we seeing in Nigeria? A lot of the problems in this country of corruption, of ethnic bigotry, of violence, we don't seem to be able to distinguish Christians from non-Christians. In the hate speeches, in the last segment we did, you talked about the problem is economics. Your own analysis is wrong economic policies that have led us where we are. But listen to what people are saying in the newspapers, on radio, on TV, especially social media. And people, responsible people, or otherwise people you expect to be responsible, spewing out hate speeches. And what we seem to have are ethnic bigots all over the place. And yet we go to the same churches. We read the same Bible. We call ourselves brothers and sisters. What kind of Christian churches do we have? What quality of Christian formation do we have that is responsible for this environment, charged environment that we can no longer distinguish Christians and non-Christians?
Father, I'll summarize it this way. Not too long ago, I said to some of my people working with me, I said, you know what I noticed? There is too much religion and too little godliness.
Too much religion and too little godliness. What a pity.
That's a disaster. Like you said, not long ago, I read something on the internet. A Christian Nigerian by his name was urging us to pray for the president. And he said the prayer was Psalm 109.
Psalm 109. And yeah. Psalm 109 is about
condemnation. May his children be orphaned. May his wife be widowed. May he...
A curse.
A curse. He was engaging Nigerians to read that prayer for their president.
And he calls himself a Christian.
Well, if he referred to the Bible, he must at one time at least have been a nominal, if nothing else, a nominal Christian. That amount of hate.
Yes.
And yet the Bible says, pray for your leaders.
Pray for enemies too. For enemies. Even if the leader was his enemy.
So that's it. It ties up again with what I said earlier. You are in a nation where there's a raging volcano in the hearts and heads of men and women.
Raging volcano.
Yeah. Waiting to express itself. Lava pouring out in different directions. Somebody says that and you say, do you believe in God? You talk this
basic.
Exactly.
Do you really believe in God?
Exactly. It's like I said to some people, who told you that if God wants me to die, that he needs your help?
God doesn't need your help.
No. All he has to do is
take the life.
And he can make me evaporate, reduce me to dust. He has the power. So when you go around killing on behalf of God, you're not serving God. You're serving evil.
God doesn't need your prayers to take me out of this place.
He doesn't need your knife or your bomb to kill me. And if you say you're killing because I don't belong to your religion or the other, the Almighty God is aware that I'm around. Even atheists exist.
Yes, and the Almighty God is aware.
God knows that they don't believe in him, and yet he still loves them. So who taught you how to kill on his behalf? Why is killing your own way of showing belief? Which God are you serving? These are the questions.
So what we have widespread is really not, there's no godliness.
No godliness. Because if you reflect on the nature of God, the patience of God, which is in fact the biggest miracle, with all the offenses we commit against him, I mean, it was to wave his hand, we will all vanish. We do a lot of terrible things. And yet he forgives.
And the common denominator of all religions is compassion.
And God, as mighty as he is literally whispering to us, begging us to change. That's the miracle. With all that power that God has, he keeps begging us, please change. That's why people complain, how can such a wicked man, why doesn't God kill him? God values him as a child. The parable of the prodigal son,
yes,
or the man with 100 sheep,
one goes after the one.
Christ said so. So God is as concerned, in fact more worried about the one who went wrong, because he doesn't want to lose any.
Yes.
But human beings don't have that patience. I mean, you go to UK today on a Sunday, only 5% of Britons go to church. Yes. They're playing football and so on. But they are more godly. If there's a disaster in some remote place, they are more willing to part with £5 to send to the Red Cross and go there. Do we do the same? Now, I mean,
the level of greed, rapaciousness,
yes,
the level of hate, yes, it definitely doesn't express godliness.
No, it doesn't, because finally, what's the finest commandment? God said, love your neighbor, love your God as you said, and love your neighbor. Because you can't do anything for God. I said so here the last time. You can't do anything to help God. He doesn't need you, but you're here and he's worried about you. Why wouldn't you show the same compassion to a neighbor? So hate. This one is Christian, this one is Muslim, this one is Anglican. And why? Finally, why don't we show some compassion one for the other? So
why are we not seeing a difference in this kind of godlessness? Why are we not seeing a difference among Christians? I mean, you go to church, yes, you are, yes, you know, committed Christians. So yes, among your brothers and sisters, Christians.
This is the issue now. People then think that in a difficult environment, I am for myself. I don't want to worry about somebody else. I don't have enough. I was talking to a friend of mine this morning, he's a former governor, and I asked him, in all your life, find out how much you actually spent on yourself by way of clothing, shoes, food, and so on. Just this. It's what you did for somebody else.
Yes.
That makes really matters. Yeah. In fact, it's what you give away that you have.
That you have.
That's your store. But how many people remember that now? You have 20 cars in the garage. But you see, God has limited our needs. It's one bed, one pair of shoes.
You can one seat in the car.
One watch, except if you are Maradona who wears 2 watches. He says one is Argentinian times, who can call his wife when he's traveling. Huh? How much food do you eat in a day? As I sit here, most days I don't have time for lunch. Too many people in the office. I get home by 6 and I run into another crowd. So when you add it up, and Christ went as far as saying, if you have 2 tunics and your brother lacks, give him 1. He didn't say 3 or 4. How many wardrobes are full of clothes we don't use? Do we give out?
And still call ourselves Christians.
Yes, and even in church, there are people who won't let anybody sit near them.
They are too big.
I mean, inside the church. So something is fundamentally wrong with our orientation as a people. The message of God is humility, love, share with each other. Of course, you have the religion of prosperity now, which says that, if you come here, you make it big. Well,
I think that is one of the most destructive elements in today's Nigeria. Precisely. The prosperity gospel.
Yes, but Christ, who was our leader, didn't even own a donkey. Oh, my Christ is not a poor Christ. Yeah, but he didn't own a donkey. He was born in a manger in the winter, probably because Joseph and his wife couldn't afford a hotel.
Yes.
It was Jerusalem, everybody came. Do you think God was foolish in sending his son to show us an example of simplicity? He didn't have a wife. He didn't have a house. He lamented, the Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head. Today, no, jets and empires.
Where did our people get all this?
They copied it from the US, the prosperity preachers of the early 19th century. early 20th century. These fellows who go and study theater arts and then go on stage and dramatize, put a carpet, charge it with electricity. When they say, Jesus, you fall, somebody switches it on. Oh, yes.
Oh,
oh, yes, oh, yes.
It's a
oh, yes, I'm telling you this. The guy, he went to prison later for stealing 13 million for the accounts of, it was the Praise the Lord ministry. I was in the US in 1987 as a fellow of the Eisenhower Institute. Drama. And yet behind the scene, he was a homosexual. His wife was jailed also for, she loved shoes like Mrs. Marcos. But that arrogance, the bath was made of gold faucets.
Isn't God so patient?
That's what I'm saying.
I mean, the patience of God, that God is seeing all this, and people performing drama in His name and leading people astray.
Father, that's the miracle, the greatest miracle, God's patience and humility, that He is watching all this rascality in His name. What did Christ own? What did He own? He lamented, say, foxes have holes and ravens have nests. The Son of Man has nowhere to lay His head.
You went to Mount St. Michael's, a Catholic school, the foremost Catholic school in Benue State.
Yes.
And I'm wondering, the quality of catechesis, the quality of Christian formation that Nigerians have gotten. I mean, I'm a priest, and this is my business,
yes.
But I'm becoming really, really worried,
yes.
Because within 2 decades, this prosperity gospel has swept everybody.
Everywhere.
Even the language of Catholics now is
yes,
it's my God is not a poor God.
Yes.
So is this a major indication of a major failure on the part of the Catholic evangelization, Anglican evangelization, Methodist evangelization, Presbyterian evangelization in this country that span more than 100 years?
It is to some extent, but it's also, again, the negative impact of my theory that the economy is the devil. There's such panic and anxiety.
That people are so vulnerable.
Exactly. Wealth. If I can escape this poverty, that's the biggest anxiety. If I can have 2 jeeps or 3. If I can have a big house. If I can have this, if I can have that. If I can have enough money to win election, then I have made it. And until you get there, there is no satisfaction.
So rather than cut down, I mean, the economy is poor, rather than cut down,
no.
People want to just become rich?
Escape
poverty.
Escape poverty, acquire wealth, acquire social significance, wield influence, and be the big shot around town. That is the ambition. But again...
And it's all about the self.
Exactly.
Not this village escaping poverty.
Yeah. So this is what worries us. And that's why in my ministry today we have a program called LIFE. Livelihood Improvement Family Enterprise. We are buying machinery and selling to communities and cooperatives around the place and young people. Go start your factory. We'll back you up. Because, Father, unless and until this economy becomes seriously productive, unless and until the widow has somewhere to go in the morning and come back with 1,000 naira, 1,500, and cook a good meal for her children, everything we're trying, even our preaching, will fall on deaf ears. There's too much anxiety. And none of us is really normal in the sense of being, I'm comfortable, what I have is enough, satisfaction with what I have and what I'm doing, and gratitude to God. Those are lacking. Is this anxiety that's driving our thinking.
So, we are dealing with a major mental disorientation.
Absolutely.
I mean, we teach here in the Terra Leadership Foundation, we teach trauma healing.
Yes.
And the stories of trauma that people narrate when they come is mind-boggling.
Absolutely.
And what you are saying is that as long as the economy is not stable, you are going to have this absolutely vulnerable people that can be swept away by any con man, con woman.
Virtually everybody, because this economic trauma has totally eroded all of our capacity to rationalize and to recognize that there are greater things in life, because the pressure of food, of rent, of accommodation, of transportation, of health are so heavy.
Are we speaking about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, people being on the first level of survival?
Yes, exactly. So it doesn't matter now.
And this whole thing about the gap between political leaders and the people, and you had mentioned in our first segment that the leaders are afraid of the people, and so everybody is in tinted glasses and bulletproof cars, and so we're not in touch with what.
It's difficult now because you flee When you arrive, we go to places, the youth gather, large numbers of them. Where your boys, you are expected to take a word of nose and throw up, and then they fight over it. We are dehumanizing them.
What's your advice as as a Christian, as a Catholic? What's your advice for the church? Because you see, the challenge that faces us is enormous. I mean, I look around and I see this prosperity gospel whereas people are dying of hunger, the pastors are smiling to the bank, every day new churches are being registered, and there doesn't seem to be any control, no standards at all. This is a territory where there are no standards.
If my figures are right, as at the last time I checked, there are 18,000 registered churches in corporate affairs.
18,000 independent churches.
Yes. As you drive around in some towns on one street, seven or six churches.
Now that we recognize that a lot of this is all fraud, is there anything that can be done about it?
Within the Catholic frame, and this is something I'd like to suggest, I think we've got to set up new units whose job is organizing communal action and ministering to very desperate situations. For instance, if we want to raise 2 million and go and fix a rural hospital.
And the Justice and Peace Commission in parishes and dioceses are in position to do that.
Exactly, that's what we should. Like in my ministry now, we just bought some borehole rigs. 2 big rigs that can go down 1,200 meters to look for water. And we're going to move them around. Schools, communities,
hospitals.
We're also grading all roads leading to our parishes. For instance, in Abuja here, we're going to do up after the rains. The bulldozers are here and the graders open up the roads. There are places within this territory that are still as far back as the 10th century when you go there.
Yeah.
Now Abuja is 15 times the size of the country called Singapore. The capital territory is 8,500 square kilometers.
Yes.
Singapore is 650 square kilometers. It is a country. It's a country in the range of the first world now.
Yes.
This place is large. I commissioned the first post office in this town and the first telephone exchange, 1982.
So they never had?
No, nothing. So, where is the mission to the poor? And where we can start doing a few things for them, because maybe not expanding new big cathedrals and so on, because I think the human being is the most precious item in the eyes of God. The size of the cathedral may be impressive, but if the community is dying of hunger, there's no point.
Yeah.
And like I said, you go to your old school and...
we do have the structures in the Catholic Church.
Yes,
we do have the Justice and Peace. We do have the St. Vincent de Paul.
We should reinforce them.
We should actually equip them to do more.
And turn the energy that way and really win more souls.
Yeah. Because
people are not exactly, in a normal sense of analysis, very few Nigerians can say, I'm comfortable.
So we can, because of the desperate situation, economic situation, what you are saying is that we can hardly even engage them in any rational thinking.
It's very difficult.
Yeah. Until we solve the basic survival
issues. Begin to solve those
issues.
things, and that's where the church can put pressure on government and governments at the state, local government, and federal level, drawing their attention where there are real serious problems.
Desperate problems.
Some governors are trying, some are not working as hard as they should. The entire local government system has collapsed under the fraud called joint account.
Yes, joint account that the money hardly gets to local
When I
government.
was chairman of PDP, I harassed the governors then because I said to them, release their monies to them so they can do the work. If they fail, we can jail them. You have immunity, they don't have. You can't find a local government in Nigeria now with a grader to grade roads. A village road for the poor, or do a culvert, or repair a market, or do a school. Money never gets to them. And so we put, what do they call them? Caretaker committee chairman.
That is under the pocket of the government.
Yeah, you give the chairman 2 million and then the rest, he can't ask any questions because you remove him.
And that is in addition to what governors have as security votes.
Well, all that. So you ask, the people who put us here, their votes, why do we treat them as if they don't exist? And then they say you're speaking grammar. What? How do you account to God when you finish that? These poor people who in the rain stood there, poor women, their cars upside down laughing to vote for you, the local government that's supposed to be closest to them is dead. In 1976, when that law decree was done, they envisaged retired PAMSECs, former ambassadors, top civil servants, highly educated people to run the local government.
Yes.
That's not happening anymore. And you raise it at party meetings and it's like, oh, you're talking grammar. It's very frustrating.
Yeah. I mean, why would I have, in my own local government, why would I have retired ambassadors, retired PAMSECs, and so on, retired directors? Why would I have them sitting down in the village and some tout?
Now you pick just anybody and put down. And again, I mean, I had in school Montesquieu, who wrote something about black people, that were people who live for the moment. We have no interest in history and no anxiety about the future. Then Hegel, 19th century. Hegel then added on to it that the black man has no capacity for strategic long-term planning, except Hannibal, the great soldier in North Africa. I was very angry. I asked myself, where did they...
But unfortunately, we're exhibiting it.
Where did they meet blacks? Later, I realized that blacks actually dominated Southern Europe for 700 years. If you read Shakespeare's Othello, the Moor of Venice, was commander of the Sicilian army, right? Venetian army, sorry. And even in Spain, Leonardo da Vinci was a civil servant under a black mayor called Il Moro.
So blacks were active in Southern Europe
for 700
centuries.
Until King Charles IV, who was father-in-law to Henry VIII, drove out the last Moors in the 14th century. But look at us. Where is our railway network? Why are we still battling with electricity? Where are first-class hospitals? What happened to roads and bridges?
So it has to do, our failures, it has to do with our mindset.
Yeah, so I was saying one day somewhere that perhaps we need the ministry of the future. It will be the most unattractive ministry because there will be no contracts. One set of people must sit down, academics, intellectuals, religious preachers, to ask, where will Nigeria be in 25 years'
But don't
time?
we have Ministry of National Planning?
That's not even far enough, because I'm talking of something a little more philosophical.
Yes.
Where should we be
in 50, when
our population is 450 million by 2050? When we'll be the third most populated country in the world? What kind of transportation will you need? How many railway wagons are you likely to need? What kind of hospitals and schools are you going to require? If nobody is thinking of it now, it's just 33 years from now, we'll get there.
The problems are many, and we who are Christians, who are supposed to be the light of society, we have a lot to do. What kind of lobbying are you doing in the Federal Executive Council, among party faithfuls, and among your friends? What kind of lobbying are you doing, especially to bring this light to bear?
Occasionally, we sit and talk. You know, some of these topics are not the most attractive things to discuss. People get tired of them. You're being a bit philosophical. You may not be speaking the language of everybody, but a few of us keep meeting to ask, we are in trouble. What do we do? In fact, we have a cabinet retreat coming up a few days' time. I said, as a half-term measure, let's sit down and ask ourselves.
For posterity's sake, sir, are there papers and documents that could come out of such brainstorming session, so that at least let Nigerians know that during the season of madness, some people were meeting and some people were producing these papers, these thoughts? Because otherwise, I mean, you will be among those to be condemned by the future generation.
Of course. Yes, we don't formalize them, but now you raise it.
Yes, it is important.
Some of them are things I have written and presented at different fora, because you know, the African has, it's a racial thing, so to some extent. We are very fatalistic, racial fatalism. We refuse to anticipate. We refuse to probe ourselves. We refuse to ask questions. Oil and gas, for instance, is gone. Yes. India said by 2030 there will be no hydrocarbon vehicle.
Yes.
The Germans say by 2030 no hydrocarbon.
So who will be buying our oil?
The French are wiring up the highways as vehicles pass on 1 million kilometers.
Yes.
They are charging gigantic batteries that supply light all year round.
So nobody will need our oil.
Oil and gas is gone. But are we seriously saying to ourselves, I am saying to myself, that in 10, 15 years, Nigeria should be doing $40 billion from agri minimum. That's what I want to do, but I don't have that much time. We're starting a plantation program. Even when I finish, at the end of this regime, if we're there today, I'll continue pushing this agenda. Because that's what to do. So maybe, as you say now, people have to put this in down.
Please put down, because one of the greatest failures in this country is documentation. So all these wonderful things we have discussed, it is important for Nigerians to know and for future generations to know that during the season of madness, there were people who were meeting, who had these thoughts. How will Nigerians know, for example, that you oppose the structural adjustment program?
That's it.
How will they know a lot of the wonderful ideas that you are putting in today? If, for example, you are not there to the end of this regime, or you are not there in 2019, how will Nigerians know that you had these plans, these dreams, these desires for the country? So please let us put things down so that the Nigerians will learn.
Thank you very much.
On that note, we will bring this segment to an end. It has been wonderful having you in this studio to discuss this. We hope that we'll have the opportunity of having you again to discuss further on how this country can move forward.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and God bless you.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you.